everybody. Welcome to Two Peas in a Podcast. I am Deana Spencer, and I'm here with Michelle Ralls once again as we go ahead and talk about another interesting topic. So we're just going to kind of dive right in, and today's topic is called Finding Your Inner Peas by Taking Personal Responsibility for Everything. And we mean everything. So this is going to be a great topic. It came about because we were kind of talking about personal situations that we had going on in our life. And I shared a story about how I learned this and what it meant for me and how it basically changed my perspective on pretty much everything. And so we're going to kind of just kind of chat about it, kind of dig around a little bit about it, because we think it's a super important topic, even though it's very vast, because this can fit into pretty much every area of your life. So we could probably be on here for a few hours, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to kind of hone in to maybe a couple personal stories, as well as maybe how it can relate to your health, fitness, sports, things like that. So basically, what this is, even because it is so vast, I'm sitting here trying to figure out how I want to tackle it in the very beginning to kind of give you a really good idea of what I'm talking about. But I'm just going to share a personal story to kind of get started so we kind of know what this means. So a while back, I was in a relationship that was very challenging, very toxic, and it was very depressing. So I was listening to a lot of YouTubers on narcissism and just things like that because I was involved with a narcissist. And this video is not about narcissism, so just kind of an FYI, but I was listening to a YouTuber. His name is Richard Grannon, who I think is amazing in this particular topic. So if you are struggling in relationships in regards to narcissism or cluster B personality types, those types of things, he's someone to watch. But I remember I was getting ready in the morning one time for work, and I'm listening to a video of his. And when you're dealing with a narcissism, it's a very, very, very painful situation that you're involved in. And I won't get into all the details because there's a lot of mind games and things like that. But one of the things that he said on a video, and I loved Richard Grannon. I was like, okay, like this guy's got it going on, everything he says makes total sense. And then one video, he says, well, you're in this situation because of you. And he didn't really, I don't know if that was the exact words that he used, but I will be honest, I wanted to, for the first time, jump through the phone and strangulate him. Like I literally got angry when he said that, because I was like, oh my God, this person is doing all these things to me, and you're telling me it's my fault. Like that was literally the last thing, like when you're in those types of situations, that's the last thing you want to hear or feel or anything. And so I was sharing that with Michelle because we were talking about something else, but you know what? He was right. And
it was a reality check for you.
It was a reality check. But right. The thing is it really unveiled how we deceive ourselves. But it's not really about, it is about deceiving ourselves, but it is also about your personal power.
Exactly.
And when I understood that piece of it, it really made me feel so free that, because it sounds like an oxymoron. And that's kind of one of the things that we're kind of talking about before was it does seem like an oxymoron because
exactly.
there's things that happen to us, right? Like life happens.
Right.
However, when you can start taking responsibility for the things around you, the decisions that have been made, the situations that you're in, the environments that you're in, you will discover that you actually gain your power back, because when you give it to outside sources, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a situation or whatever,
even in a job, even in a job,
even in a job,
your power back. That's right.
Yeah, you are giving. What you're doing is you're giving your power away. And I'm also going to throw in there excuses.
Oh, exactly.
Excuses is another one. So it's kind of like, well, I couldn't do this because XYZ or blah, 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 right? And so, but however, if you go, nope, I decided to, simple enough. You can say, well, I decided to stay up late, so I missed this appointment or blah, 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 blah. So it's kind of like, you need to kind of monitor yourself in regards to how you're handling your personal situations. Like, are you catching yourself making excuses or giving your power away to another person, another thing, another situation, blah, 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 blah. So we're going to talk about those types of things today. Like I said, if you can get the gist of how vast this can actually be, because it's literally learning how to rethink your circumstances, your situations, your relationships, your whatever. So that's why I feel like this topic is super important, because it's really about empowerment. It's
And I think
really
if you want
about
to follow us and come along with us, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You're going to hear more about this topic in our conversations.
Oh,
so
for sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely hit that subscribe button. We really appreciate that. Yeah. So anyway, when you're putting blame and fault on other people and other situations, then you are really truly giving your own power away, because you're pushing it away and saying, well, because that person has that power over me or that situation, then it's out of your hands. Like, basically the ball's in their court, so you can't do anything, which is a lie. It's a lie. So
that's
excuses, right? So anyway, I thought maybe even if Michelle, I don't know, because like I was even thinking yesterday, there was a couple situations that happened at work yesterday. And, I was thinking about, oh my gosh, like this would be a good example, or a friend of mine, like she's going through some situations. And I just, I would catch little moments where she would say XYZ, this is, because of XYZ. And I thought, if she would just learn to take that personal power back, she could change the situation,
Well, in my experience, I was like you. I was in a marriage where, it was a narcissistic, sociopathic situation. And thinking about what you were saying in your relationship process, and we've had this discussion before, is that you do allow yourself to make excuses. And that responsibility is completely upon you to stop that excuse process. So you can continue to make excuses for the situation and continue to move in that path. But after 9 years of being married in that situation, I knew it was my fault. It was so evident that it was my fault. I was in this position when I knew better. I knew that this was wrong from the beginning, but yet I was just so willing to put myself into it and say, maybe it'll change.
Well, yeah. And what the thing also that I was thinking about is, like, to get specific as to where if someone was like, I don't really understand what you mean. I stayed with this person for a while. And the thing that I really had to think about was, okay, so let's just say there is a situation that happens in the relationship and you decide to forgive or decide to to move through it.
Sure.
That's a choice.
Absolutely.
And it's so every day that you're in a situation, or you're taking someone back after they do something 16 times, that's your fault.
Yep.
Because there's crossroads every day. Like we go into crossroads of making decisions, like which we can talk about later in regards to our nutrition or trying to lose weight or training or whatever. We make a decision every day, whether it's small or big, to create a pathway to our life, in our life. And so making those decisions of, well, I think the biggest thing that hit me was I keep allowing this person to be a part of my environment.
And that's a common habit. That's a common habit in any relationship. It really is. So whether you are willing to accept it or not.
And that's the key. Yeah.
Exactly. You've got to take that responsibility that you're making an acceptance for, what you're putting into your path, the decisions you're making. So yeah. Correct. So let's move on. Let's move forward with this. I like this.
Well, and this is when you said that. So there's a couple topics that we're going to jump into, but it's, one of the things that kind of comes to mind, I'm just trying to throw out a couple examples because you can hit on this too, but that's relationship wise, but we also talked about maybe training or just kind of things that are more like health focused in the sense of what you and I do. It's
Well,
You
from
know,
a nutritional aspect, I can give you a perfect example.
exactly. Yeah, go for it. Because this is, yeah.
It's going to hit home with me. So, being a nurse, being a nutritionist, I went through many different pathways in that aspect of I knew better. I knew better than to eat this. I knew better than to do that. I knew better than to be this way. I was bulimic. That was before I became an actual nurse and nutritionist, which kind of that's what led me to that path, why I was so interested, because I wanted to be better. But yet, whenever I became a nurse and a nutritionist, I didn't actually do better. You know what I mean? It was one of those situations where I was still smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. I was, not drinking water. I was drinking soda. I mean, I was drinking up to 24 packs of Mountain Dew, in a week's time frame. It was just nothing for me to put that, because I was so much into my career and I was so into just surviving, being on the nursing floor, that the nutritional aspect, and here I am teaching my patients that they need to eat this way, don't put salt in your diet, take this fluid restriction. And yet I'm sitting over here going,
I'm like,
why am I not listening to my own, So then it came down to a health situation. It literally came down to my health and winding up in a wheelchair and not being able to function, and having my child, my at that time 15-year-old son, was having to help me take my showers, and my husband was helping me with my medication. So, I did not accept personal responsibility and landed myself in that situation, so I had to take responsibility at that point and say, look, I'm not going to sit here and die. I'm too young.
Right. And that's such a good point. Like, how far are you going to push it to where you're made to take responsibility of something?
Right.
And this is such a great topic because it also hits on your personal resilience, which we can talk about, as well as boundaries, because resilience is really important. I think some people are just naturally born with a higher level of resilience. And we see this a lot in sports. I mean, obviously everybody has a level of resilience, whatever you're doing in your life, but resilience is, when you see it in sports, it's kind of like, it reminds me of when Rocky Balboa is, I believe, talking to his son or his grandson or something. And he's talking about how hard can you get hit? It's not, but are you going to get up, like that type of a thing? I can't remember the exact quote, but so it's that type of thing. Like, are you willing to kind of get punched in the gut a little bit to grow and to become a different person? But I think too, to know that if you start experiencing taking on personal responsibility, the sense of freedom that you have, and it's just something that kind of washes over you, where you're like, oh my gosh, like I have so much personal freedom now. I have the choice to have this person in my life, or I have a choice to lose the weight because I'm taking charge of my calendar, my priorities, my blah, 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 whatever it is.
Right.
And so that's why I was saying in the beginning, like, it's kind of an oxymoron, because taking on personal responsibility for everything sounds very daunting and very negative almost, in a sense. But
I want to throw out there too, it can sound selfish, but you're not being selfish. You're absolutely not being selfish. You are taking on you.
Yes.
And you are allowing yourself to be you, to be what you want to be, to live the way you want to live, and to set the boundaries of what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to go over. So there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely not. So, set them, make it happen,
right.
Take it.
And what you said earlier kind of piqued my interest a little bit, because sometimes we're in situations, we're in work situations, we're in whatever situations the word that you used was, I was trying to survive. So even though you were on a great path of career moves, different things like that, you were still in survival mode. And so I think that that's a key thing to look at. Are you doing things, because when you're in survival mode, your decision making is much different than if you are not in survival mode.
Absolutely.
And so I think that that's kind of a key thing to take a look at within yourself, because this is a journey. This is learning how to do this, is not an overnight type of thing, you do have aha moments. And I've gotten in the habit of kind of pausing every now and then and going, okay, I'm feeling kind of poopy. And so what could I take charge of? And that doesn't mean like I'm going to manhandle and like, you better do what I say or blah, blah, blah. But what can I take personal responsibility in order to better the outcome, to create an environment that's conducive to being well? And the other thing I wanted to point out is what you had said earlier. You know, when you think it's not a selfish thing, because what you're actually doing is you're creating the best version of yourself.
Absolutely.
And so that's what's really cool. Like when you start going, you know what, that was my fault. People are going to start looking at you differently when you start owning up to being human, but also that you have that personal integrity about yourself, that you are honoring yourself by doing that. You're honoring the people around you by taking on that personal responsibility.
So it's funny that you say that, because that was a lot of where I created a lot of support that I didn't really realize I had, you know, when I'm sitting here all of a sudden and I'm filing for divorce, and, you know, people are in my surrounding, you know, family and friends, and they're like, wow, did you finally just like wake up? And it was like, no, I was just trying, as you said, survive, which is what I've always, you know, felt like I was doing. But it was amazing to me how many people saw things on the outside that I wasn't seeing until I got that reality check, you know? And then all of a sudden, you know, I was being called selfish and, you know, self-serving and things like that, of course, by that individual party, because that was the way, of course, they felt. But, you know, in the middle of it all, it was me taking responsibility for me putting myself in that position and allowing things to go as far as they did.
Well, and that's a great point, because I think when you start shifting, people are used to you being a certain way. So whether you change for the good or for the bad, you're going to start attracting, which we're going to talk about a little bit later.
Exactly.
You're going to start attracting who you are. And so that's actually a really, really great point, because it takes some bravery to shift in your life, because even though we're in a bad environment or situation or what have you, like say for instance, well, no, I'm not going to get into super like examples at the moment, but like when you start making changes, you will either start attracting those types of who are new, maybe some new people, or maybe some old people who you're aligning with now. But there's other people that might not follow you, or not necessarily follow you, but have that same energy as you. And so they're going to be critical of you, possibly just cut off ties, et cetera, or start saying that you're selfish and those types of things when you start not aligning with their energy.
Right.
And so it's really, again, you making a choice of, well, who do you really, really want to be in the long run? And that kind of goes into kind of the second part of our discussion here, as it all ties in together, is one, your resiliency, but also resiliency is kind of a whole other topic, but it does have to do with this. But the main thing is really about boundaries. Right. It's really about, you know, because like the reason why we kind of make excuses or put things onto the outside world is because we don't have boundaries. Because when we put things out to the outside world, like I talked about earlier, it's out of my hands, it's out of my control, meaning I didn't put that fence up and go, no, that is not going to happen. And, you know, so those types of things where it's like, well, I couldn't help it, or it just happened, or blah, 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 you know. And so again, these are, you know, I'm not going to say that life doesn't happen and things, but again, we can always talk about, well, what led to it, as well as how are you going to handle it after it happened. So there's always a time and a place for the opportunity to take on and own whatever is going on at whatever time frame it has happened. I hope that kind of makes sense, but
it does. I mean, there's always an opportunity to take a look at what's going on in that moment and assess it. And if it doesn't align, those are when decisions need to be made. So
right. And so I guess that kind of goes into proactive versus reactive, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, because it's, you know, because I'm sitting here even pondering over things like even just general workday things, or, a lot of the things that are on my mind is like weight loss, or like just general stuff that a lot of people struggle with. Or like when I'm dealing with athletes, like, are you training enough? Like why, you're here because of, right? I'm not saying training's easy. And I'm not saying just because you show up 7 days a week that, you're going to be at this level or what have you. But a lot of times it's really that really fine line that we can miss sometimes of, yeah, you showed up, but what did you do?
Right.
Right.
How much did you really put out, and what goals did you set for yourself before you came there?
So I have a really good example of this because I'm not going to obviously name names or anything, but there's a friend of mine who's in a marriage in which, well, I think actually a lot of people can relate to this, is you're in a situation or you're in a relationship where you consistently, constantly talk about your needs not being met in some aspect, form, or fashion. So when you're constantly saying blah, 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 and there's just no change, no response, those types of things. And then you say, well, I've been asking for these things for X, Y, Z, or, X amount of time. And that person comes back and says, well, I did this and I did this and I did this. And they're not lies, but the kind of looking at, again, kind of making excuses as to why you're not meeting that person's needs, right? Yeah, you did do those, but probably were you coerced into doing it?
Did I have to ask you?
Did they have to ask you?
Did I have to lay hints across the table periodically?
Were you breadcrumbing just to kind of get that person off your back, like that type of a thing? And honestly, that goes in with yourself. Like, I just keep thinking of the same topics when I'm talking about this, because one of the big things that I deal with, just friends talking to me and things like that, is one is weight loss, right? So it's kind of like, well, you're eating out 6 out of 7 days, but you think you know what I mean? But you're like, well, I ordered this.
Oh, I do. I've got several nutrition clients coming to me right now. It's the summertime, right? It's the happy time of year, correct? So, what are they doing? They're not drinking their water. They're eating out every day. They're wondering why I've got 10 pounds back on. Well, what exercise did you get in this week? I'm just asking.
Well, I went to the gym, but I sat in the machine and watched a video. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, you can sit there and say that you showed up.
Right.
But what are you doing?
Showed up, but did you produce?
Right. And it's funny because, I deal with a lot of that type of stuff with training. And it's like, yeah, I could see your face in here 7 days a week. You showed up, you're here, you checked in, you got your skates on. But one of the things that I like to communicate, and I like to think of this in life as well, is, are you going to scare yourself a little bit today? You're going to get outside your outside your comfort zone. Are you going to I don't want you to terrify yourself and try to make all these changes, but are you going to get off the ice feeling exhilarated? Are you going to push yourself to the point where you didn't repeat, where you did the same things over and over and over and over again? And this is called
your comfort zone.
Yeah. And it's called frustration. I told a group of adult skaters, I said, look, there's a really fine line between feeling frustrated and feeling fearful. Because you have to get out of, a little bit, lean into that fearful zone in order to get out of the comfort zone.
That's correct.
Right. And so the reason why we get frustrated is because we're on repeat. It doesn't matter what level you are. It doesn't matter what you're trying to achieve or do. But when you constantly do the same thing over and over again and not changing or pushing here or pushing there, just even a little bit, you're not going to have aha moments. You're not going to have those types of things. And you can sit there and say, you can come up with a dozen reasons as to why that's not happening. Right. You can even say, yeah, I'm too afraid. Well, then do something to not be afraid. Right. What is fear? Fear is it's basically not knowing. It's not knowing.
It's just not knowing. Exactly.
Right. Because the expectation, you don't know what to expect, the outcome, and so you create a fear. There's a fear there. So when you start embracing it a little bit at a time, that fear will dissipate. And you create a new acclimated level, right? So it's kind of the same things as when you start setting up your boundaries or pushing back a little bit, or just saying, no, that's not okay. This is what I want.
Right.
Or even again, like what we're talking about, taking on the responsibility, and that's scary sometimes, right? Saying,
It
yeah,
is.
but
It's very scary.
like, yeah, that is my fault. I created this mess. Because here's what happens when that happens. You
So I
can
had a
say,
situation last
yeah.
night, same respect, a friend of mine contacted me and, she put herself in a situation. Isn't that what we do? We put ourselves in these situations.
I have never
We
done that
allow it.
before.
We allow it to happen.
Right.
And so she put herself in this situation to the point now where it's going to cost her. It's going to cost her dearly. And then she was like, what do I do? It seems like I always get these phone calls. What do I do? What do I do? I can't figure this out. But yet you put yourself there. And that is something that someone does not like to hear. I mean, do you like to hear someone come back and go, well, you put yourself there?
Oh, no, of course not.
It's not something that rings well with the ears. So she's like, so how do I get out of this? And, I said, you have to start putting yourself in the position of keeping, number one, your information to yourself. Number two, you've got to start putting yourself in a position where you're going to think outside this box and you're going to figure out how to get yourself out of this situation. Now, you can be guided, but you've got to accept the responsibility that you made this decision to go where you're at.
Well, so when you're telling that story, a couple things came to mind was, do you think that one, okay, I'm going to ask twofold things. If my brain's all over the place because I'm like, but when someone says, what should I do? In some ways, because I was thinking like, okay, if I'm in a situation, is it really that difficult to come up with an exit plan? So sometimes asking other people is again giving away your power to some extent. There's a difference between like getting advice, but like, what should I do? Most situations, it's just that we just don't want to do what's required. And so, because sometimes it literally is, I got to break up with this person and move out, or I have to quit my job and find a new career path, but whatever it is, or I have to actually have this surgery because I didn't take care of myself.
Right.
Like sometimes we just don't like what's in front of us. And so we, again, give that power away. I think it's something that happens, because
it happens a lot.
Yeah, because in some ways, I'm not saying things aren't complicated, but I'm saying sometimes the answer is kind of right there. It's just, we just don't want to have to do it.
We just don't want to fix it. We don't want to see it, Oh, that can't possibly be the answer when that is the answer.
Or you're hoping like, what should I do? Somebody's going to come up with this great plan for you that's not going to hurt.
Right.
And so there was let me think, because, just for our audience, just so you know, I'm moving. So my brain is literally all over the place. So if I look sitting here, like losing track of what I'm thinking of, but it'll come back to me here in a second. But that was kind of the things that I was thinking about when you were talking about that, was when people are asking you to, I guess in essence, take care of something, that again is like, here, I don't want this.
She wanted a simple answer. She wanted that easy button. I wrote a blog, about the easy button. Everybody wants the easy button. Can I just press that and it'll all go away? That's not the case, which is why we're here today. You've got to take the personal responsibility and take action to make those things actually occur and happen the way you want them to be. And you've got to set the boundaries. You've got to step outside of yourself and put yourself in a position of where you need to be. Not so much maybe where you want to be, because that's going to be uncomfortable for a little bit, but where you need to be in order to get yourself where you want to be. So,
well, and that kind of reminds me, like, kind of goes back to what I mentioned in the beginning, like when I heard that when Richard Grant was talking in that video, right? Because I was still stuck, and it kind of reminds me of your survival thing. I was still stuck in victim mode, whereas I didn't even realize that I had personal power, because I was so stuck in victim mode that this person or this situation was doing this to me. Right. And so but then realizing, which was such an incredible, I guess, moment for me, where I was like, it seems simple, but you're like, oh, like, what am I tolerating? What am I allowing to take place here? What's acceptable behavior? What's unacceptable behavior to me, so that I can create the most optimal environment for myself and for those around me, right? And so that's kind of, in essence, what we're talking about here in setting boundaries, but you also have to set them for yourself. Like, what are your boundaries? That's actually a great question, because I think sometimes when we're in situations where we're constantly the victim, that we have proclaimed to be, and sometimes you truly are the victim, but you still have personal
That's a great place
power.
to start too.
Is, what are my boundaries? What do I want them to be? Because it's not like there's not just like these generalized boundaries, right? But we're gonna decide what your personal boundaries are, how you want to live your life, what kind of people are allowed to be in your yard.
Right.
I kind of described this one time. I said, well, you have a house, that's you. Then you have this massive like lawn or like property, and there's fencing up, right? So people can come in to your yard if you allow them to, but everyone else has to stay out.
Right.
So it's up to you who is allowed to come in and be in your environment, because that's your property. That's you're the house. So who are you going to allow in your house? And also, who are you going to allow on your property, because that's your property.
Right.
And so learning to embrace that and realizing that that is your personal power, that you have the right to say, this is not okay with me. And even to yourself, this is who I want to be. I want to be disciplined, or I want to not be fearful, or blah, blah, blah. Right.
Right.
So those things, I think that's kind of where, if you're kind of wondering like, well, where do I start with this? That's actually a great place. Like, take an inventory. Like, what are your personal boundaries? Are there people in your life that make you feel horrible? Are there people in your life who make you feel great? What types of personality traits or behaviors are they doing that make those things happen, or make you feel like, oh gosh, I don't know if I really want this person in my life, or I want this person to stay in my life, or whatever. But that's really,
I just want to point out that your analogy of the house with the fence, that is a great place. I use that a lot with my clients, just so everybody knows it is a great place to start. Use that house analogy with that fence as to where your boundaries really are. You know, if you're a visual person and you have your paper and pen like we are, then draw that house out, you know, put that fence up and start with your boundaries. Where do you want, and who's going to play in your yard and who's not going to play in your yard? You know, it sounds childish, it may sound selfish, but it's not. I promise you, it is the best place to start. So start with your boundaries.
I love that. And the thing also that comes to mind, you and I may have talked about this briefly, but you reap what you sow. You're the sower. You know what I mean? Even our last podcast was about planting seeds, wasn't it?
Yes.
But you know, but like, when you think of a farmer, they're going to plant seeds, right? And they're going to get a harvest.
That's correct.
We are life farmers, basically. We are creating a harvest of something. And so you have to remember that nobody else is sitting there planting seeds for you. There are things and situations and people and whatever that will influence those seeds.
Or help you initiate it.
Correct. So, but in general, overall, you are responsible for that crop, for whatever you're reaping, you know, whatever is coming out of that.
Right.
So that's kind of a good, for those of you who obviously have read that scripture, maybe that's really a good one to kind of take that into thought, maybe into journal, you know, because it's about as simple as it gets right there. You know, it's a really good one. So
I just want to point out, because you said, you know, journaling, this is a great opportunity if you're not a journaling individual to start journaling. You know, put it out there, get your mind down on paper, because it helps you process where you are, what you do not want, what you will allow, and what you won't exceed. So great place to do that is in journaling as well.
Mm-hmm. So I thought we'd kind of do, this might be fun because this is such a vast topic. I thought I've got like, and I just, honestly, I just kind of thought of this. I'm kind of going off the cuff here a little bit, but Michelle and I were talking about what areas, my gosh, this fits into so many things. So I thought maybe we could ping pong back and forth a little bit. So, you know, this can talk, this is obviously in relationships. It's in your health journey. It's in athletic and sports, could be in your work. It's in your finances, right? Or it's in your whatever. But I figured what we could do is just take those topics right there and just really quickly maybe relate this topic to relationships, right? So I kind of gave an example before, like I'll kind of start it off here, but it's kind of like, what are you willing to tolerate? Does it go against your boundaries, not against your boundaries? Are you in a situation where you're being taken advantage of, where you're being used, where you're being gaslighted, are you in a relationship that is healthy, that's not toxic? Are you able to recognize that? But in order to take personal responsibility for that, you do have the power to leave. You do have the power to change yourself. You do have the, you know what I mean? Like those, so those are some areas that I feel like are super important. We always talk about maybe romantic type of relationships, but this can be any relationship. This can be,
it can be work related to an actual, you know, romantic relationship.
Yeah, family members. Like
Absolutely.
really take good inventory of what you will allow in your life to create the best version of you, right? So I'm going to let you kind of hit on the next one, which is health journey. Like what's a great example of maybe not taking on personal responsibility or kind of using excuses, you know, not owning up to, like, do you have a good example like that most people could relate to?
Yeah, you know, I mean, so, you know, we always make excuses in our health. I don't know a single person that hasn't made a health excuse, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure you can come up with several instances where you have health excuses, you know. A lot of, you know, individuals are like, oh, I just, you know, can't really fit working out into my schedule right now. But yet you can get up, you can go to work, you can go with your friends after work, and but why not cut some of that out in the respect of the free time that you do have and put that towards the actual working out time, you know, whether it's walking, you know, gym time, whatever the case may be, riding the bike, whatever it is that you enjoy. Because you do have to enjoy it.
Oh, I agree.
There has to be an enjoyment to the process. And if it's not fun, then it's work. And then if it's work, it's, you know, going to cost you to make more excuses. So, you know, in that sense, I say, you know, in many cases, we turn around and we have a lot of free time that we turn around and say, oh, I just don't feel like doing that right now. That happens. But when you are sitting there at the doctor's office and he's now telling you that you're going to have to take this medication, or maybe it's time to have this type of procedure because this is what you've done to damage this process, that free time would have been more valuable in putting it towards your health instead of now being in a position where you have to make some real decisions that you didn't make. So
yeah, like one of the things that I hear all the time is like, well, I mean, this is just probably one of the most common is processed foods. And I know this sounds funny, but a lot of people that I have talked to who are trying to lose weight, the first thing I tell them is cut out fast food, processed foods. Just literally cut it out. Like try to get rid of it as much as possible, but yet their lifestyle, and again, taking on that personal responsibility, is processed foods. It is the ease of going out to eat all the time. It's
that easy button.
Correct. And that's like, well, it's funny because what you just said kind of cracked me up. You just said the first thing out. Well, one of the first things out of your mouth was like, "Oh, I don't feel like doing that." Right there is when you go, I made that decision because legit, I did not feel like doing it.
That's right.
And so that created a pathway of my journey. So right there, but a lot of times we'll have that quick thought of, I don't feel like it. And we'll just literally like pass on through. When you don't, that's where you need to halt.
Right. That's where you need to go, oh, wait a minute.
Right.
I'm not taking responsibility for this right now.
Well, and it reminds me too of relationships. It's like, well, he said he was sorry. Or she said he was sorry. she said she was sorry or whatever. Right. And it's kind of like, well, are they? And the other thing is how many times have they been sorry? So it's kind of like, where does the fine line of, it's not because, I think too, a lot of people who are very empathetic and who are very
we are
wanting to give, we want to give people chances and we want to say, well, they said this or whatever. But
here's my thing with sorry. I have an issue with sorry. Let me just talk about sorry for a minute, because me and sorry don't get along. You can say sorry, and that's fine. But I only give you one time to say sorry. Your repeated behavior
exactly
does not allow for me to accept sorry past that first one. I don't have, you want to talk about boundary, there's my boundary.
Right. And that's kind of where, that's a perfect example of like your set, how you have decided to live your life and what is acceptable and what is not.
Right.
Repeated offenders, so to speak, cannot come into my yard anymore.
Right.
And when is that for you? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, and are you doing it out of insecurity? Because honestly, this topic is so important because it really does dig deep into your self-confidence, your self-worth. Exactly. Because that's how your boundaries get created. And that's where your excuses come in and all that kind of stuff, because it's so much easier not to find value in yourself because you're so busy wondering if other people have it for you or if the other situations have it for you, that's how you navigate through your life. But when you start taking on that personal responsibility and saying, you know what, I created this mess, I need to fix it. That's self-worth. That is... Exactly. That's where your freedom comes in. And that's what we talked about earlier. So the sorry excuses is when you finally put your foot down and go, sorry, not acceptable anymore. So you can go outside the fence until you fix yourself. Right. Or that's up to you. You don't have to fix yourself. And that's a healthy detachment of saying, I'm not going to judge you or anything. You're just not allowed in the yard anymore.
Exactly.
Until this happens, or you have a choice now. Just to decide whether or not you want to participate and play in my yard.
You always have a choice. Everybody have a choice. Everybody has a choice, Right. And like I said, sorry and me have not gotten along for many, many years because I do not approve of repeated behavior. So you can come to me and say, well, I'm just not in the mood right now, or I just don't have the time for that. So now you've made an excuse, but then you want to come back to me and say, oh, well, I'm sorry I didn't get this done or that done.
Right.
No. Now your sorry doesn't fly with me.
Right. So, and once you start knowing what you want,
right.
That's the first thing, and who you want to be, that is when you start recognizing these things.
That's right.
But I wanted to kind of get into the next thing, which is athletic and sports. I'm just going to throw an example out. One of the things that I've seen, we can talk about practice, but I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about competition. A lot of times, one of the things that I feel like is the hardest thing to teach a skater, whether it doesn't matter how old they are, but is presentation. Because skating is very much an athletic endeavor as well as a presentation, that it can be very challenging for a skater to put as much attention into performance, like literally legit fingertips performance type of things,
right,
than into just jumps and spins and doing technical elements. It's very hard to convince them that those points are very, very important and very necessary. So I've had students where all they focused on was trying to land jumps or get spins, and they constantly went into they didn't improve, didn't make the minor changes that they needed to, even in the technical side. And they just thought just because they showed up and put in the work, I'm going to say put in the work.
Right.
They showed up and did the same thing repeatedly over and over, never making any changes and never actually focusing on presentation. They constantly come in last or close to last. And so it's whose fault is that? Like, we can easily say, sitting here having this conversation, well, it's the skater's fault. But trying to convince that skater that, because in their head, and this is such a good analogy of where all of us are in life, you showed up. But what happened in that time frame, right? Did you make those small changes?
Right.
I had a student, I'm just going to throw this out there. I had a student that one time I said, are you ever going to make any of these changes that I've talked to you about over the past year? And her response was, maybe. And as a coach, you're like, you know what I mean? Because it's that mentality. And it's kind of like, then don't come up to me after a competition and gripe and whine and feel sorry for yourself because you got X, or I got 4th place, or I got 8th place out of 10, or whatever it is. Please don't do that.
My situation to that too is the fact is, you know, when was there a conversation about that changing? You know, like, when was there this continuous conversation between you and her about making these changes? And when she wasn't making these changes, you know, why was there not a reality check at that point? Was she too young? I guess I would have to ask that question.
No, I don't think so. Because I mean, I have students who are much younger who, because this goes along with, and these conversations happen pretty much almost every lesson. It was literally, it was the first discussion that I'd had, but it was ongoing, you know, because I mean, I've had discussions with skaters that I'd be like, look, like, you're not going to win.
Right.
Now, I don't have those all the time, but I'm just saying, because of blah, 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 blah. Like, and sometimes it's good for them to see the competition because it's a reality check. It's not coming from me because I can be the legit excuse for that person. Well, they didn't tell me, or, you know, that coach isn't right for me. Like, I've had situations where I've seen skaters blame their coaches for not passing a test, and that is not the legit case. So, or what have you, or you know what I mean. But it comes down to that individual making that personal choice of putting in the actual work. Now, there were times that she came in occasionally and came running up and said, oh my God, I landed this, or blah, blah, blah. And then there was that spark in her for a fleeting moment because she experienced the push. She experienced the change.
But it must have not been enough for her to push each day to make that feeling occur each time. So it must not be enough of an exhilaration for her to say, yeah, I want to feel that again tomorrow. Like, what can I do tomorrow to make this better? So one thing I want to say about sports that, you know, I really believe is beyond, you know, it's just above all. I should just say that. Sports overall is you've got to feel that all the time. You really do. I mean, like, each day you go out and you learn something in your chosen area, baseball, soccer, skating, whatever the case may be. You have got to, number one, put forth all the effort, and then to feel that exhilaration of accomplishment so that you are getting better with each time. And if you're not feeling that way, people, please take a step back and assess why you're not. Maybe you're not listening to the coach. Maybe you're not, you know, putting forth all the effort, but assess yourself.
So it could be burnout. It could be burnout as well.
Sure.
But
that's
another thing. And that's another thing to look at. Whole other topic right there. But yes. But I think too, it kind of boils, like, if you want to simplify this point, it's really about progress versus, it's about reaping what you sow.
Right. It does go back to that. It really does.
So, and that, you know, and you deciding, and you deciding whether or not that sport's for you or not for you is actually, it's another decision to be made.
Sure.
But that's, again, you making those decisions and you being honest with yourself.
I mean, let's talk about that. It's even in nutrition as well. Not everybody follows the same capabilities, you know. Not everybody can handle a low carb diet, or not everybody can handle a vegan diet, or not everybody can handle this type of meat or that type of vegetable. So it all goes hand in hand. But again, it goes back to the same discussion of you reap what you sow. So if you're going to put this out there, now we're going to talk, we'll go into that here in a minute. So I'm ready to go for that. You know, manifestation is a huge thing. So
and so kind of like the last couple of things is basically work and your finances is, you know, sometimes we're in a job we don't like, or we're treated badly. Like, we can always say, you know, I have to have this job because of whatever, but do you have time to look for another job? Can you throw out 2 resumes a week? Can you, or even 6, whatever it is, 1 a day? There are ways to kind of take on that personal responsibility of getting out of a bad work situation. Can you take a class? Can you go to school? Can you, like, what are some avenues in order to help change that environment or what have you? Can you have a discussion with somebody higher up above your boss? Like, those are just kind of some examples of taking personal power back, of not being a victim, so to speak, or being treated badly every single day by someone you don't want to work with or what have you, or so taking that on. And again, finances, or how are you managing those? So those are, really taking a hard look at yourself, really taking a hard look at the decisions that you're making on a daily basis. When you say, oh, I can't afford to go here or there or pay this bill, but you're ordering DoorDash every other day. Do you know what I mean? Like, what Starbucks? I'll be honest, every time I hit that DoorDash, order,
right?
I'm sitting here biting my fingernails. It's not because I do it all the time, but it's a conscious thing for me. Like, I'm like, I am spending my money on paying someone to deliver food to me, and again, like, sometimes I'm like, no, okay, I'm more the type of person who will actually suffer.
Right. I'm the suffering point. I will not pay for,
right,
that kind of situation.
But due to circumstances that I'm not going to say are out of my control, but I am in a situation where I am packing the house up at the moment by myself. It's not a good or bad thing per se. It's just, it is what it is. And so how I handle that. So yeah, there are times that while I'm packing, I am ordering food because it takes care of a situation.
And I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
But I'm just saying,
we're talking about the financial responsibility of, being financially responsible for yourself. So, if you're coming up and just like you said, you're coming up and saying, well, I can't afford this. Well, you do need to reassess the facts. Are you ordering DoorDash too much? Are you at Starbucks too much? Are you,
right?
Every morning, perfect example. I'll throw my mother out here. Every morning at 5:30 in the morning, she's at McDonald's for her senior coffee. And every day after work, she's back for that senior coffee and her chicken sandwich. So, it's just the way it is. Yeah. But then don't complain about what you cannot afford at that point, because those are all things that you can cut out. So, or maybe you've got some shopping sprees on clothing or whatever, shoes, whatever the case may be, you need to slow the roll. So
I love it. Slow the roll. Yeah. So, so again, I just kind of want to just throw these simple examples out just so that, relatable to audience, because some of us are not athletic and some of us are not doing stuff with nutrition, but we also are, that's part of life. We're in relationships, we have work situations, we have financial situations and those type of things. But I do want to roll into the topic of, when we talk about creating our environment, we are actually manifesting, because our energy attracts energy. And so maybe talking a little bit, we're going to kind of go just a little bit and kind of use that as a springboard into creating a life. And how does that work? And like, I'm going to let Michelle kind of take over with this thing here, but it goes into our mindset and what we are creators overall. And so when you, like, I'm just going to finish up kind of with this, I guess, wrap it up thought here in regards to, like taking on personal responsibility. Like when you do that and you're in an environment, you do have the power to change things through decision making, through recognizing where you can take personal responsibility so that you can empower yourself to create a different, healthier, vibrant environment for your life. And so with that being said, I'm going to let Michelle kind of take over here, but we are going to continue to discuss how manifestation works. And then just kind of our energies and how we either attract or deflect, I guess, certain things in our life. But Michelle, do you want to kind of kind of dabble in that a little bit?
Make sure you chime in here, because you do offer a lot in the mindset aspect.
Oh yeah, I have some stories about manifestation.
Right. So and we all have the ability to create our own as you might, as I like to say, create our own backyard and start over. So,
Yeah.
You can actually sit down and the first thing is acknowledging the fact that we are where we are.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, like we talked about, assessing how we're going to get out of it. But when we go moving forward in that direction, how do we get out of it? Well, you create, and when you create, you receive.
Uh-huh.
So whenever you are starting this process, one of the things, and you and I've talked about this before, because we're big into our podcastings, we're big into our mindset activity, personal development.
Mm-hmm.
These are all things that we need to start with. So if we're in a bad relationship, get yourself into a mindset of some type of personal growth and getting out there in a podcast or a YouTube, or, even getting into a therapist. There's nothing wrong with a therapist. I want to throw that out there. I am big into getting yourself a therapist. And that's one of the reasons why I got out of my first marriage. Thank God for a therapist, because I was young. I didn't know what to do. Marriage was two people. You were supposed to stay, right? Through thick and thin.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
How much thickness can you take, and where does the thinning break? So,
right.
So get a therapist. I absolutely, love the fact of therapy. But taking that next step, and moving forward is, again, that responsibility. And once you've accepted the responsibility, then let's start manifesting what we want. Let's start creating what we want, getting out there, and maybe it's, meeting new people to guide yourself into that relationship process of what you're really looking for. But before you do that, love yourself, step into yourself, find yourself. And you can do that by getting into what it is you want and what you like. So get into that mindset, get into those, we all have social media. So get into the social media, get yourself in, but don't dig into the negatives. Make sure you're staying in the positive at all times. And we can all fall into that negative pattern, right, Deana?
Oh yeah.
So
well, I kind of wanted to throw this out there was, like, what are some practical ways to find yourself? Because that's kind of a big thing.
Sure.
You're like, okay. And you're sitting there like, how do I do that? But I think sometimes, like, one of the things that I did was, and this is how I actually started skating, because I've had wanted to do it for decades, was I literally made a date with myself. It was on the calendar. And sometimes you just kind of have to, it was like, I was literally nervous. I remember the day skating to the ice rink, and I was like, I was by myself. I was going to be meeting people I never met before. But again, so I broke out of my comfort zone, and I started to embark on a journey that is now what I do as a career. And it's interesting when you start really embracing who you are, because you do know deep down inside. It does sometimes take a little digging if you've kind of been in a situation where that has been suppressed for quite some time. But maybe like setting a date to spend time with yourself weekly. It doesn't mean you have to go all out and go do something per se, but maybe it's sitting at the lake or going to the ocean or journaling or whatever it is, but just getting to sit with yourself for an hour, maybe a week.
And I call that self-care. That's what I call that. That's self-care. That's actually you sitting down and taking care of yourself, and putting yourself in the next direction. That's giving you an opportunity to put it out into the universe, what you want, what you're looking for.
Right.
That peaceful time, but you're throwing it out to the universe. Hey, I'm here, and this is what I want. And that gives you the opportunity then to manifest it from that point. We'll go even further. Go on.
Well, but that is kind of what I mean. Like, that time is supposed to be spent either like getting to know yourself a little bit. So whether it's meditation, whether it's going to do something that you think you might enjoy, you don't know, you're just checking it out, or it's something that you'll enjoy because you've done it in the past, or whatever. Maybe you're reawakening something that you enjoy or love to do that has been maybe put on hold due to life circumstances or things like that. But those are just kind of a couple of things to do in order to. Because just, like, I think like some people get overwhelmed because when I make comments like, well, I think you need to get to know yourself, or I have a friend right now who in some ways she's kind of forgotten who she is. And so every once in a while, we've known each other for so long, I'll say, well, this is who you are. and I'll start naming things up because I was her roommate when we were younger. I'm like, this is what you used to do. This is what you and I used to do. We used to have so much fun. And we used to like do things, spur them up. Like, anyway, it was just kind of this general reminder, like, this is who you are, hun. This is who you are, what you are. And it was kind of refreshing for her to hear that, because sometimes we forget. But anyway, I'll let you continue on with the.
No, that's actually a good point. I want to point that out. Put yourself around people who are positive.
Mm-hmm.
Because that brings back the positive energy as well. You know, we're talking about energy here, so the energy needs to be good all the way around. But you said you told someone who they were. Sometimes we need to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with putting yourself next to someone who can give you that self-awareness.
Yeah, and I wanted to share one more point. So when I first started dating my current boyfriend, one of the things that we talked about when we first started dating was, I said, look, I want you to pursue who you are, because I want you to love your life. We've literally had this conversation where I said, I want you to love your life because I want him to shine as bright as he can. And part of it is because of selfish reasons, but this is why I want to be able to, one, do the same. I want to pursue who I am wholeheartedly, 100%. I want to be myself. I want to experience life. And I want us to come together and do those together. But as well, if he has separate interests than I do, I want us to come together and be excited about what we're participating in, so that together we are both bright lights shining together.
Right.
And I think that overall is kind of the whole gist of this thing, is when you become who you are, right? You become the brightest version of yourself. Number one, you will attract people who want to be like that.
Exactly.
But be wary. Okay.
You do need to be wary. Yes. I mean, I'm not saying be on guard all the time, but I'm saying.
Well, here's the thing. You have good energy. Some people want to want to learn from you, but other people want to take your energy. So just be careful with that. And you'll learn along the way, but that kind of does go with the manifestation type of a thing. You're attracting. But here's the funny part about this is different. Attracting and manifesting is a little different, because you can attract some great people into your life, but you can also attract people who go, wow, that person has great energy. Nom, 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 nom. They take it. So kind of, it's a thing.
Like you said, you'll learn along the way, because you do realize who those people are. They show up very quickly. And if you're out there putting all this energy out there, which you really should be, you'll find those individuals who will want to come in, and they show up automatically. They'll show up, and you'll know that they're sucking it out of you, and that's not who you need to be around. Which is what I was talking about earlier, with a certain individual. That individual loves to put energy of what they feel is energy out to the air, but actually what they're doing is taking other people's energy and not really manifesting what they need to manifest. So I did a little redirection last night with that. And you have to. So be prepared that you will have to be that person, that says, that's not the energy I'm looking for, and that's not what I'm wanting in return. And when you put out there what you are wanting, what you are looking for, it does start coming back to you. Just give you a perfect example. Attracting is different than manifesting. So, before we bought our house, this was a year ago, and I still have it. I journal I've got hundreds of these over the past years, because I've been journaling since I was 20, 21. So with that being said, I was journaling last year about how I was going to, buy a home. Prior to that, I was going to buy a brand new Jeep. I had written all this down, and I actually surprised my husband. He was like, I can't believe this actually happened. But, whenever you start writing things down and you start talking about it every day, I do the same thing that you should do as well. As I'll post, like I had a picture of a house. It wasn't the house I bought, but I had a picture of a house, and I told myself every day, I'm going to buy a house. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to buy a house. This is everything I did. My Jeep, and I had a picture of my Jeep. I knew what it was. So I had that puppy. It was up there. And every day when I went to the bathroom, that's what first thing I saw. And I'm going to get that Jeep. I'm going to have that Jeep. But I also set a date.
Mm-hmm.
So by that date, I had what I was looking for. And with the house situation, it was the same way. I set a date. I knew my lease was up by December, so it had to be before that time. And by November, we were in our house. So manifesting is throwing it out there and talking about it every single day. Because the more you talk about what it is you want, no matter what it is, talk about it to yourself. Put it out there. But you've also got to set a goal every day to meet it.
Well, and that's kind of the thing too that I was thinking about when you were talking. Let's see here. So there's goals, like, okay, we have a goal, like, so like manifesting, like for instance, like say for our house that we just got, it was like stuff, when stuff is pending. So kind of a way that I did some of my meditation, and I guess you could say manifesting, was I closed my eyes, because I don't know if anybody's knows who Greg Braden is, but he talks a lot about this actually, but just look him up. But anyway, to make a long story short, he had talked about how he was visiting a Native American tribe, and one of the tribal members said that he needed to pray. He was praying for rain, basically. And so he stood in the circle and closed his eyes, and it only took a few minutes, and Greg was like, I don't know what this guy's doing, but like, he's thinking he needs to like wait for a while, because he's praying for rain. So when he came back, he's like, well, I thought you were going to pray. And he goes, I did. He goes, so basically what this person was doing was, he goes, well, I smelled the rain. I felt the rain on my skin. And so this is a huge part of manifestation, of visualization. Like when you start visualizing, smelling, seeing, living in that space in your head. So when we were waiting to hear back about this house, I meditated and I thought about, I'm walking around this house in my head. I'm envisioning where my things are in the house, and I'm experiencing living in that house. So those types of things. And that's why it's important to be specific, because, and so that's kind of one of the, I guess, a practical way to kind of think about it too. But one of the big key things I want a takeaway here is feeling, smelling, like feeling the rain, smelling the rain, you know what I mean? Like those types of things. That was kind of the biggest thing that I had taken away from that, was it truly is about, in your head, living it as though it's already happened. And that's what he did. And they did get rain that evening, by the way. So, but
that is what manifesting really is. You're seeing it. You're envisioning you in that moment, in that space, in that time. And the more you do that every day and set that goal to be in that direction, again, that's the difference between attracting, which we can talk about that, and manifesting. Manifesting is actually seeing it, visually being there.
Yeah.
But
no, I did. Yeah. I had a cool thought. Was I had just mentioned being specific, and I want to throw this out there, because when you aren't specific, and I just mean even in general, like let's pretend you don't ever sit down and actually like focus on manifesting or meditate or something like that. The universe is going to throw stuff at you. It's going to match your energy. Right. So if you're not really actively participating in what you want in your life, and you just kind of letting it happen and kind of roll through stuff, right? It's going to kind of just throw whatever your way.
Throw some garbage your way.
Right. That's why sometimes those of you who are into manifestation, or you listen to you listen to things like this or read books on it, and they're always talking about being specific, because if you're not, they talk about confusing the universe. Like, well, what do you want? Like, you know what I mean? So that's it. So the more specific that you can be, and this is twofold in the sense, like when you start thinking specific, you are also getting to know yourself at a very intimate, deep level, because you do start asking yourself those questions. Well, what do I want? Do I really want a 3-bedroom, or do I want a 4-bedroom, or do I want a 10-bedroom? Or it's like, or do I want, you know what I mean? Like,
maybe I want 2, maybe I need 3, you just I mean, these are things that, well, that was actually a conversation that I had to have, in my visualization, because, I wanted 3 bathrooms. We've got 2 grandchildren. I needed 3 bathrooms, and thank the Lord I got 3 bathrooms.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And so it's kind of, right.
And it may sound trivial, but it's not trivial whenever you're manifesting what you want. So, but the biggest thing with manifestation is that you're setting a goal to make that happen. Now, if you're just looking for the attraction side of it, let's talk about the attraction side just really quickly. So if we're attracting, again, that's putting the energy out there and you being that energy, and then it attracts what it is that you're putting out there. So there's not really goal setting to that. There's not really any manifesting to that. It's basically based on an energy level.
It's an energy match. And that's one of the hardest things I had to learn about myself, was because I was always in survival mode, or I had a very low self-esteem or self-worth version of myself. I was attracting people who took advantage of that.
Right.
And that's where this all started, was that legit taking responsibility for who I was on that deep level of saying, I'm attracting these types of people into my life.
Right.
And I'm attracting, and I would attract those people in my work. I would attract those people in my personal love life. I would tolerate friendships that I had no business allowing them into my life. People that used me, people who devalued me. And kind of in the back of my head, knowing that I had much more worth than that, but would not embrace it. And then until I started to do that. And honestly, I do have Richard Grannon to thank for just kind of punching me in the nose, so to speak, and waking me up a little bit with that statement. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to wake everybody up, but it happened for me that way. And maybe this video might punch you in the little nose. But I'm just saying,
if it does, let us know. We'd love to know. So
let us know if we punched you in the nose a little bit. But and it's pretty alarming when you start understanding your personal energy levels of what you're attracting and what you're not attracting and why. It's very eye-opening. It's actually refreshing, but also it can be a tad gut-wrenching when you start initially taking on, like, oh my gosh, I'm the one that's creating this. I'm the one that's creating and allowing and attracting these types of situations and people into my life. It really does kind of put a fire under you to really do some self-assessments and self-evaluation to determine, again, who and what you want to be, so just kind of throwing that out there. But so there's that.
So mindset, let's talk about mindset just really quickly, and then I think we can wrap this up. So mindset is huge. The negative thought processes are what gets us into the situations that we get in. Whenever we've got this constant negativity about ourselves, that's the attraction that comes back into where we now are, for decision making, things like that. So mindset is super important. And if someone wants to know how can I get started with mindset, my go-to is Mel Robbins. I love Mel. She actually helped me get out of bed. Her 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 was getting out of bed. Whenever I got to the point where I was, with my health and how bad it was, and just not wanting to get up and go, but yet I knew I needed to. I still had, a teenager at home. I needed to make sure he graduated. I needed to make sure he got out into life and didn't stay home forever. But the thing of it is that Mel Robbins is a great place to start. She's great with, that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and getting that mindset activity going. But in the midst of mindset, it's all about, again, everything that we talked about today. Just to kind of wrap that up, your mindset is all about where you're going, what you want, and how you want to get there. So again, wrap yourselves around people or align yourself with people who have the same goals that you do, who align with your activities, and who, again, have that energy that you're looking for, because that mindset will grow from that. And then you'll be that person, that can actually help someone else, that you see
Oh,
is
yeah.
not doing so well and needs to
Mhm.
have a change in mindset. So,
yeah. And I think too, for me personally, sometimes I'm not going to lie, sometimes getting up at 4:30 in the morning is not fun
no,
because that's part of my job. Right. But one of the things that helps me is it's literally while you're laying in bed, that alarm goes off and you have thoughts like, oh my God. Then you start looking at your day and you're like, okay. But the thing that I remind myself of, and I'm just using this as an example because I really think the morning time is really a great time to set the bar as far as like how you're going to be thinking throughout the day. So I can easily roll out of bed and be like, like just kind of like grumpy and all that kind of jazz. But I sometimes spend time reminding myself of who am I spending time with today because I have clients.
right.
I'm thinking of the positive aspect or what we're working on or what kind of goals are they trying to reach and what am I really going to have a bad time? No. Right. Usually my days are actually pretty good. Do I get tired sometimes? Absolutely. But we all do. And is feeling a little tired like going to make or break my day? Mm-mm. No. So it's just reminding myself that this moment of feeling tired in the first minute of me getting up is literally nothing. It's not a big deal. And what I do for a living is such a blessing. Like I have to reset. I have to remind myself and I don't know, kind of change the mindset instantaneously in my head. And yes, we do have the power to do that. And to get that negative thought out before it takes over the morning, because that morning goes into my day and moving forward from there. So it is a legit thing to practice because a lot of times I think that we go with the flow, so to speak, and we just kind of let our emotions or let a thought take over instead of going, no, like that's no, I'm not living with that thought in my head today. I need to change that and replacing it with something that's legit going to create a different and better day for myself as well as everybody around me because we all impact one another. So, and again, that goes with energy, right? That goes with your mindset creates your energy. So that's something else to keep in mind. If you're going to walk around with a negative mindset, you are creating a negative energy, a low vibe. So, this all starts with yourself, literally from the get-go, like and that's why, again, it trickles down into that personal responsibility. I wake up, I'm going to make a decision to have a good day. I'm going to make a decision to think of all the positive things that are coming my way today, those types of things. So I'll just leave it on that note, but yeah, so as you can, yeah, so there you go with that. But all right. Do you have any other comments, Michelle?
No, I don't. I think, that number one, if, this has hit you in any way and it's been a great, reflection for you, please let us know. Put those in the comments for us and make sure that you're hitting that subscribe button. We are very appreciative for all of our subscribers right now. We love each and every one of you, and we are so thankful and grateful for you. Mm-hmm. So please keep that energy coming our way because we love it, and we hope that we are tossing it back your way and that it is actually helping you in some way, shape, or form, because that is our goal. Is to help you as a person, an individual, a family, whatever the case may be. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. So I'm good for the day. I am so appreciative to everyone, and thank you for being with me.
Yes, and thank you again, everybody, for your support. We do appreciate it. We did hit a little bit of a milestone in the last week or so. So we just right off the bat, it was kind of fun. We had like 25 downloads, I think. So in my opinion, just starting this podcast. So thank you very much. We are looking forward to spending more time with you and having some great topics to share with you in the coming weeks. So thank you again. And this is 2 Peas in a Podcast, and we are super grateful that you were here, and we will definitely see you next time. So again, thank you for joining and have a great day. So thanks.